Welcome to the Sports Card Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Big Ken. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on a streaming service, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. You'll be notified whenever I drop any new content. Welcome. Thanks for being here. How is everyone doing? Happy Thursday. AFC, NFC championship game coming this weekend. How about them Chiefs? Sixth straight AFC championship game. I know most people think this is the end of the road for them this week. Ravens are going to beat them. I believe otherwise. I believe you put Patrick Mahomes on the road as an underdog, no pressure, nothing to lose. I think they go back to the Super Bowl this year. That's my call, and I'm putting it on tape. Fingers crossed, right? This year, and lately, I should say lately, I felt a little bit scattered in the hobby. I put a plan together last year, called a few audibles. I started, January, I had this plan of, all these RPAs I wanted to buy between, January and the national. And then I figured, no, this is not the way I want to go. And I dropped and I went to different cards. So I called some audibles. I really executed that plan well between January and August last year, buying graded football on the cheaper side when the market was down, holding till the market surged in June, July, August, and moved it all, right? And it worked. It worked because most players, the value of, most of those cards that I bought went up. Some stayed the same, but I never lost any money on it. Maybe a few stayed the same, but most went up, and it's just the nature of the hobby, right? Just that ebb and flow, that roller coaster, where prices are up, prices are down. So it just made sense to do that, just to buy those cards, hold them, and sell them when the time was right. I did, however, discover the biggest profits and the easiest profits, and I've talked about this, was just acquiring raw cards and grading them. This year, the flip game margins have been slim at best. And even trying to buy, in lots, going out and saying, I want to buy these 4, 5, 6, 8 cards, trying to buy them, it really seemed good at the time, the percentages buying them. But when it comes time to sell them, right, the patterns that I see, the majority of people buying, it used to be, 90, 85. Now, people will tell you, like, you guys will message me saying, oh, I get 90% on every card that I sell. And that's fantastic. And if I could get 90% on every card that I sell, that would be perfect, because I could buy at 80, sell at 90, and I can make 10% on every single card, right? Or better. But it just generally doesn't work out that way. Most of the time, the people they're wanting to buy that, and I mean, it's like beating a dead horse, right? I say this all the time, and those people are just looking for as much margin as they can to go take it and sell it to somebody else. So this year, my plan, right? I talked about this. My plan this year is to acquire raw and grade, right? Interesting thing when trying to change lanes in the hobby, and you start going back and doing things that you already know don't make a lot of sense. And for someone like me who creates content, and I'm doing this, and I've talked about it, I could go back. This is season 4, and I could go back to season 1 and season 2, and some of the things I'm going to bring up today are some of the things I talked about then, right? So it's you're trying to change lanes, and you're trying to say, okay, I think this is really going to work, but those old hobby habits, they're hard to break, right? And they just keep coming back. I mean, they're easy to fall into. They're definitely easy to fall back into. Because in order to transition, you need to take, right, the knowledge that you gained from being in these lanes before, and figure out a way to have them make sense. So once you've already done this, or I've already done it and said, "Oh my God, that doesn't work because A, B, C, or D," right? And I'm not talking about grading the cards. I'm talking about acquiring the cards, right? The idea of getting these cards raw and grading them, right? That's a perfect idea, and everybody agrees. There's not one person that said, you know, uh, any of this content that I put out and said, "Ken, that's a dumb idea. Don't ever do that." Nobody says that. Everybody agrees. The most profits you can get is in grading cards, and that's why you're sending the stuff off to PSA, and it's taking months and months to come back because everybody's doing it, right? It just makes sense to do. But acquiring those cards, right? Going out and getting those raw cards, it's tough to do it, without falling back into some of those, do I say bad habits, or just those habits that it just doesn't make sense, you know, doing things that don't make sense. I mean, some positives when buying raw cards, right? I'm able to go back to online auction sites and buy raw cards. I know a lot of people I talk to, talk about being on Whatnot and things like that and just buying singles here, there. Um, I can honestly say I haven't done it yet. And people are probably shaking their heads like, "Oh, you fool." And people tell me all the time to do it, but I get on there and then I get in and I never get into the right rooms, right? I never find my way into where really I'm supposed to get into. Or I get sidetracked in something else that I become mesmerized, and it's next thing I know, it's an hour later. I'm like, "Oh, I was supposed to be buying cards, but I've been watching these guys open up these boxes or whatever they're doing, right?" Um, so uh, I'm able to go on, right? There's definitely value there, and I feel like I'm a pretty successful sniper, on these online auction sites, and I'm pretty persistent in making offers. And there's times, and I'm sure this is I I spend a lot of time, perusing through eBay all the time, looking. I'm of course I'm looking up, comps there. I'm getting comps there, but I'm always looking at, for cards. I have, like we all do. I have save searches. They notify me this is available, that's available. So I'm always, and once you go look at one thing, you have to look at 25 other things. So it becomes this whole process online. And for a while, the only things I was buying online were just my PC stuff, anything I could find with the PC stuff. And this year was a nice change for me to go back and be able to start buying, some raw cards from the, Don Russ and Prism, when it came to football, just starting to find some raw cards again and not buying them all, and just trying to snipe in and identify, become great with the clock, right? This, 24-hour clock, the 18 and 1900, when these things are ending, to try to figure out, because I kind of stay up late, so try to figure out. Sometimes these auctions are ending at 12:30, 1 in the morning, when East Coast people aren't, you know most people on the East Coast are in bed by then, right? So I'm just battling with West Coast people, and some things that I see that are going to end at 3 or 4 in the morning. I find a lot of people, they don't put bids on anything until, just like me, until the very end. So something may stay, and I'll throw this out there. I can pretty much tell when something is getting shilled, when 5 minutes to go, these bids start flying in. Where, like, if somebody really wanted this, they just would have waited the 5 seconds to go to throw that bid on. They're not going to throw, move the number up over, a couple $100 with 5 minutes to go. They would just wait to the end. So something like that, when I start to see the stuff, flying up, I just back out. I know that you know somebody's going to overpay, on that card. But it's been pretty good for me. I've been going through some cards. I see people, I have a lot of save searches, stuff pop up. Some people just don't know the value of their cards. some cards that, are selling for 70, $80, somebody puts up a 35 or 45 or $40, buy it now, and I just jump right on it. I'd be quick. I make sure I read everything, that it's not talking about it being damaged, and this person's got some, good feedback. There's a lot of things you got to look at in a very short amount of time, because I'm competing against other people when they put it up. And the one card I just got the other night, it was Anthony Richardson true green prism card. The guy put it up for $35, or buy it now, or best offer. And I'm like, 35. And I looked through the whole thing, and I bought it immediately. And he responded back and he said, "Wow, that was quick. Did I sell that too cheap?" What am I supposed to say? I'm just hoping it ships, right? I received that card today. It came today in the mail, and the card looks beautiful. Absolutely gradable card. So yeah, I mean, just getting little deals like that again, it's a little bit fun. And it becomes, with the singles, it becomes like a whole new hobby within the hobby, right? Not only for these online raw cards, right? And I mean, I know there's downfalls to buying these raw cards. I mean, I understand, no matter how much you blow things up and look, because it's happened to me. Like, I've gotten a couple cards, that I paid, probably close to comps, or around comps, or slightly under, and the card comes, and there's a little dimple on the card or something. And then I just reach out to the person, and I say, "Hey, I've got this card, and I'm looking at the picture that you put up there, and it's an angle that doesn't show this dimple. So what can we do here?" Like, you knew it was there, I knew it was there. And other ones that come, and there'll be a mark on the card, and I'll be like, "Oh," I'll go back, and then I'll look at the picture closer. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, that mark was there." All right. So, I see what I can do, see if I can wipe these marks off or whatever, and if it makes sense. And if it doesn't, then you know what? I could just sell these cards too. I can take these cards out to a show, put them in a box, and sell them as is. And people will ask sometimes. I was just at a show this weekend with a card, with a CJ Stroud rookie card, and the guy picked it up, and he's like, "Oh, why wouldn't you grade this?" And I said, "Well, it's got a mark on it." He's like, "Oh, let me see. Where is it?" So I mean, I'm going to tell the people, because people know, I know, if I show up and I see a card, most people grade cards, right? If a card looks like good enough to grade, most people are going to send it out to grading. So that's another thing, that it turns into a hobby within a hobby, because allows me to go out and start digging through singles boxes, which I never did before. And I talked about, I never wanted to do it. And now I'm finding it to be a little bit more fun now, because then I'm starting to find things that I never even knew existed. Not that I'm buying them, or not that I'm buying them, but all of a sudden I see something from a set, and I'm like, "What is this set?" Right? And then I either take a picture or a mental note, and then I'll go back and look it up to see what this set was. So it's a set that I never even knew existed, of, say, from a TV show or a movie or something like that. So it's just kind of cool that come across things that you didn't know existed either. And like I said, digging through those single boxes at the shows. uh Doing that for me, going to some of these shows, has become a little bit more fun, because I'm not leaving empty-handed. And that was starting to become a pattern, for me going to shows, trying to buy into slabs, and say, "Okay, like, I'm interested in this card, this is, can you take this? Can you take that?" And going back and forth. So, probably over the last year, I talked about getting a lot of these cards and being, happy with the prices. And now, more recently, going out and trying to buy these, graded cards, these slabs, is just haven't been able to get, because everybody, I mean, we talked about, the margins being so slim. Like, it doesn't make sense to me to go through all this, to put the money out there to buy the card, to make $8 or $10 or $12, or it just doesn't, because I only have so much room in my case, right? So I talked about wanting, if I'm buying cards, I wanna buy cards that are more liquid. I want cards that I know if I put in my case that people are really gonna want them and they're gonna sell in the next couple shows, and I can just keep, turning over my case so that I'm not sitting there with stale cards that people are coming up and seeing the same card show after show after show and saying, "Oh, yeah, I still got that card." And I've been through that. I've had those cards in my case, and people come up and they know me immediately. They'll look in, they'll be like, they'll look up at and they're like, "Oh, yeah, you were at the Bubba show. I remember this card." And I'm like, "Well, that's not good." You know, you want people to remember you, but not by the stale card in your case. So, it's because it was harder and harder for me to leave, and he almost felt like I came all this way, I should buy something, and then when you start thinking that way, you're like, "You know what? I really need to start thinking this." Like, you feel like when you were a kid and you're at the store and you didn't wanna leave, you're like, you didn't care what you were gonna get, you're like, "Ma, buy me something," right? I want something, and when you get to that point, you're like, "Okay, you know what? I need to rethink this a little bit more because doing this and getting that thought in your mind that I don't want to go home empty-handed. I want to go home with something that usually is a recipe for disaster there. So attending shows have been much more fun, right? I'm not leaving empty-handed. I'm digging through boxes. I'm finding things, and probably the best part, most of all, is lower risk, higher reward. Right? I'll say it again, lower risk, higher reward. Buying the raw cards, not risking, because I'm generally you're buying the raw cards either at comps or under comps on the raw card, right? Um, and I want to say, as I say that, I can't tell you how many, very very expensive, like 2 to 3K cards that I purchased graded, right? And I sat on them because the market came down, the money stays dead, and it doesn't come back into play until I sell the card, until I break that card out, right? So in this one here, lower risk, I'm buying the card, I'm able to look at it right here, the best I can to see if there's any marks on the card, to see if the card would grade well. Um, Sometimes you come across a card that I'll say, "You know what? I'm not even gonna grade this card, but I may just drop it in a one touch and drop it in. Maybe there's a nice patch in the card or something like that." So it doesn't have to come down to the card needs to be like every card's gonna gem, and that's the only card I'm gonna buy. But because there's cards out there that aren't being graded and are sold raw too. So I'm happy to buy it if I know if I put it in my case that I'm not gonna lose money on it, and more importantly, I'm gonna make a little money on it. And on something that I wanna grade, I'm gonna look at it the best I can. I need to relook at it, with the my equipment I have at home, to really know for sure. But, if it passes, checks most of the boxes while I'm standing there, I'm happy to buy the card. And one of the things, and I've done this on the other side of the table selling cards, is if you're buying a number of cards, I'm gonna throw you a deal anyways, right? And that's what I've noticed on the other side of the table. So you're digging through a box and it's, say, it's a $5 box or a $10 box of cards, and you pull out 4 or 5 cards. On the $10, I pull 5 cards out. I'll say, "What can you do for these?" Usually they'll say 30, 35, maybe 40. I've been to a couple tables where they'll be like, "No, it's 50 and that's it." Okay, all right, so maybe I might just put these 2 back and take these 3 instead, but to me, those 3 cards are definitely worth the $10, and I'll take them home, I'll reinspect them, and if they're good enough, I'm gonna send them off to grading. Low risk, high reward. The best that could happen is that they gem, right? The worst that happen, they come back a 9. Like, I haven't had any. I've had some cards come back 8s that I knew had problems, but most of those were my PC cards, that they weren't cards that I was reselling. Um, with the hockey cards, I had a couple 8s come back, and I don't know why they came back 8s because they looked so good. So there's always that something could come back an 8, but most of the time they're 9s or 10s. And it's easy enough to know on a particular card, right? It's easy enough to say, if this card was a 9, a PSA 9, I mean, what if there's another one out there? I could look it up right away. Okay, the PSA 9s are selling, say, at $60, right? The PSA 10s are selling at $200. Well, if I'm buying the card at $10 or $15 and it's cost me $15 to take a shot at grading it, if it comes back a 9, right, I could double the money, and it comes back at 10, it's 4 or 5xing it. So right there, low risk, high reward. Not every card is like that, right? I'll say that right now. But some of them are like that. Some of the prices work out that way, and gets me excited, gets the blood flowing, saying, "Here we go. This thing can gem. This could be a very profitable little card." PSA is offering grading deals now too, as low as $14.99 for grading. So that works on the grading end of it. $5 less than well, if you're part of the club, right? Which I've been, you buy into the club, but and even $5 less on those. I don't have to do the math. It just makes sense. I mean, it's just low risk and it makes sense. You know, with the plan, with this plan, right, come some of those downfalls. If everything I just talked about was everything I was doing, right? It'd be easy, right? Be like, man, this guy, Big Ken, he knows what he's doing. I mean, that everything just sounds perfect, right? But there's a but. Yes, there's a but. Because it's easy when you're running in the singles game to say, hey, let's start buying some wax. Because we know how much Big Ken loves to rip those wax, those boxes, right? Loves to open up those packs of cards, right? So you start buying in. So it's like, all right, new Prism's out. The Don Russ was out, few of those, got a few of those. The Prism came out, buying some Prism Blasters and the Prism Megas, and you start realizing, yeah, I've been down this road before. And if you're not lucky, if you're not super lucky, those boxes just aren't making sense. And you also have to realize, with Panini, that they produced twice as many boxes this year as last year with virtually the same amount of hits. And if you've ripped open a blaster or a handful of blasters or 3 or 4 blasters, and these things, you say, wow, it's $30. It's low risk, right? Maybe you can get $10 or $12 worth of, you can make half your money back. But that's true. But is that really what you're opening the boxes for? Or are you opening the boxes because you want to hit, a Stroud Prism Silver, or Anthony Richardson Prism Silver, or, some other cards in there? And there's really not a lot of cards that fetch a lot of money. So as you're ripping them open, there's very few cards that you're really hoping to pull out of there, right? And what does that remind me of? It reminds me of the breaks, right? And yeah, that too for me. Said, why don't I jump into a few breaks? Like try swinging a little harder, right? Try to swing for the fences a little bit. I jumped into a number of Prism Hobby breaks, and I had an episode on, I don't know, 4 episodes ago, saying that the new Prism Hobby sucks, and I jumped into breaks with some top tier teams and completely struck out, and was just shaking my head at the hit cards that came out. I mean, I was in a break that opened two Prism Hobby boxes, and people will tell me, I get response from people all the time. They're like, don't open boxes. That's just a waste of money. Get into the breaks. But you know what? Maybe I'm getting into the wrong product, but Prism is supposed to be, like the working man's hobby box, right? It's the one that most people, when those cards are graded a year or 2 years, 3 years from now, those, it's the card that has the higher pop count, but the one that everybody wants, right? Some of those different inserts and the silver prisms and things like that. It's just crazy what Panini has put in some of these boxes for the hit cards. And I mean, I guess if you know, and if you don't, you can go out to YouTube, you can go jump on and watch some breaks. I watched somebody who the breaks that I watch, and they had a whole case and they were ripping 2 boxes at a time, and I said, "I'm just gonna sit back to see, you know, how well this goes." And every time they were doing it, when they were done, they're like, "Oh man, dude, we got 4 left, or we got 6 left, and man, the box of fire is coming. There's one of those boxes that's gonna, it's just gonna be full." And everybody kept buying back in, and it got to the end of the case, and it never got any better. Um, and then I think of the money I threw into the break, and I'm like, "Geez, I should just been buying the cards with that money." Being more focused and not swinging for the fences. But again, it's those old hobby habits that are hard to keep away, right? When I got into the hobby, when I jumped back in, it was opening up boxes, and it was opening up boxes of baseball. That's the Bowman Megas is where back in 2020 I started opening up the Bowman Megas, right? So loved it. Realized that it didn't make much sense financially, but I love doing it, and it's so exciting to do. And as much as I say everything, I have coming from Target, I have Prism Megas and Prism Blasters coming. I pulled out a number of cards that are off on their way to or at PSA now, um, that I'm hoping that will grade very well. But I don't know. It's really hard to tell, in the time period between now and, I mean, all we can do is speculate who's going to be hot come June, July, and August. And that's it. And hopefully these cards will come back, and hopefully that the pop count come June, July, and August isn't like so massive that the cards are selling like people. And you know what happens? All of a sudden everybody's graded the same cards, and now people are putting them on eBay, and they're like, oh, well, there's 75 of these PSA 10s for sale, and this guy's selling it for 800 and 700. Well, I'm just going to sell mine for 500 or 400 or 300. And it's just all of a sudden it's the race to zero, right? It's a race to the bottom where people are just trying to say, oh, let me just sell this as fast as I can. So we don't know who it's going to be, if they're going to hold their value or not. I mean, we're just taking a chance on it, really, basing what we're doing, right, on the past, right? Looking back last year, the year before that, trying to compare players, see what happens in the playoffs, what happens in the Super Bowl, what happens afterwards, and what happens with people as we go into the next year, when people kind of get away from it and then they're watching they go through the basketball playoffs, and they're in the watching baseball and even the hockey, right, through the hockey playoffs, and then boom, now we're all focused back on football again. And who's it going to be? Who are the hot guys? Well, we know when Stroud is going to be one of them, obviously, but who are the other guys going to be? I mean, that's what we're working on, right? That's what we're trying to hit it right. uh I always have to say this, and I laugh when I think about this, and maybe you will, maybe you won't. But you know what? When those breaks start, if you get into breaks, you're like feeling super lucky. You're like, let's go. We're gonna get something. Like, I got a good feeling about this. And then at the end, you're like praying for a miracle, and somebody's yelling last pack magic, right? And you're like, oh my God. I gotta shut this off. As soon as that last card comes out, you're like, hit the X on the computer screen. You're like, damn. You're like, what a waste. But and even buying some graded cards, right? That's a little bit of a downfall. It's a little bit of a setback for me. I talked about this on my last episode, that I was trying to buy, a couple of Mahomes downtown, and they were graded. They were both PSA 10s, right? And you know, as much as I put a plan together where I'm buying raw and I'm grading and this is how it's going to work out, like, all of a sudden this sub plan comes in my head, right? That I'm going to, buy these 2 cards. I'm hoping they're going to beat the Bills, 2 days later, or the next night. I'm sorry, that was Friday, so Saturday night. And then I'll take both of those to Atlanta, and I'll sell them both in Atlanta this week and at a profit, right? Not part of any plan that I put together this year. But when you get to a show and you start thinking, like, the thoughts in your mind, they take over, right? They're like, "Oh, here's a new plan. We're gonna have a plan within a plan within a plan, right? And we're gonna have three plans going at once, and this short-term plan is just gonna be for 1 week, and then everything else." And it really doesn't make any sense because if the Chiefs lose Saturday night, then where does that card go? Do they stay where it is and it possibly may come down? And maybe a card I would have had to sit on. So maybe the guy did me a favor by not selling me that card. I mean, after I started thinking about it this week, I said it's probably better off it didn't work out that he didn't sell me the card, even though if I would have gotten the card at the price I wanted it probably would have worked out. Um, the bottom line is, with the hobby, and it seems to me like I hobby like I drive, right? So I get on the highway, I'm in and out of lanes, I'm exceeding the speed limits, I'm like kind of a little bit all over the place, and I kind of felt like I'm hobbying like I'm driving, right? That I'm a little bit all over the place, and I'm trying to, focus and come back in. Um, and I think one of the best things is being a content creator. It's helped me continue to refocus what I'm doing in the hobby. It's one thing in your mind to make it make sense, to think about it. And regardless of how bad it went, you're like, well, maybe next time it'll go better. Like you think that in your mind. But it's another thing, when you start creating content around it and you start talking about it and putting it out there. And as you're saying it, you're like, oh man, I need to smack myself, right? So sometimes and it people say, oh, they say to me all the time, one of the things I like is you're honest and you'll talk about the L's on there. But I think I have to because I think it helps me, you know, become a better person in the hobby, right? Become a better dealer in the hobby, become a better collector in the hobby, become a better everything in the hobby because I'm just able to talk it through and it makes me, think it back through and how I'm going to put it out there, for the listeners to understand, right? And it helps me make better decisions in the hobby. So in keeping with my plan, this week I sent off 5 orders to PSA, over 150 cards, some baseball, a lot of football, some women's soccer, some pop culture, something for every season between now and August. I have some cards I'm waiting to come in. It's the 24th. I know this PSA deal ends at the end of the month. If I can get 10 or more of those cards in before the end of the month, I'll send another order off. But, sending that many cards to PSA, when I drive that box over to the post office, I hand it to them. I come right home and I look it up on the computer and I leave it open on the computer. I leave a window open on the computer and I'm refreshing every few hours. And I don't ever relax until at 10 a.m. this morning when it says, "Oh, good news, your package was delivered to PSA." I'm like, "Whew, thank goodness it's there." Right now, I only have to worry about it getting home from there with all the graded cards in it. And speaking of PSA, I got a card back yesterday from PSA that I sent out, and this card was posted on my Instagram, and I talked about acquiring this at the Fenway show. So it's the 2017 Upper Deck Diamond Club, the Wayne Gretzky Auto, 17-30. So if you're on YouTube, I'll hold it up. It just came back a PSA 8. And on this card, I knew there were edge issues. I was hoping it was going to be a 9, but I think an 8 is solid for this card. It's a pop 1. So really excited about this card. I'll be taking this with me to Atlanta this weekend. And speaking of Atlanta, traveling, right, to Culture Collision this weekend, traveling down to Atlanta. I'm arriving there early, very early Friday morning. Table number is 4B, seat 11. Not sure what that means, but that's what they tell me. And if you're down there, come find me, say hello. I'm going to be set up with Craig and Carmine from Crosstown Cardboard podcast. Craig at New York City Sports Cards, Carmine at Carmine's Cards. So we've planned this. We're super excited for this. We're getting ready to meet up. I see Craig because he's here in New York. I see him at a lot of shows. Carmine, this will only be the second time. Saw him met him for the first time at the National, and this will be my second time hanging out with him again. So looking forward to that. Friday, I plan to do some shopping before the show starts. My goals, right? Putting goals together for the weekend. Going to be looking for raw cards to grade, on the dealer side of it, digging through some boxes, going through cases. I personally broke out a few big cards, dusted them off to put in the case, in my case. Some of these cards I haven't seen the light of day since the Nationals. So this will be the first time out, back out at a show since then. So, and I like, I go to these bigger shows. I like to break out, some bigger cards for bigger shows. I'm going to continue to search for my remaining 5 2012 NECA Hunger Games cards needed to complete that set, those on-card autos. And with my women's soccer PC, I'll definitely be looking for some cards there. The beautiful thing about that is those prices are way down now, and I'm getting a lot of good deals on cards. I'm super excited about that. Saturday night, I'll be at Cards HQ. That's Jeff Wilson's new store. They're having a trade night. I'm going to be at the trade night Friday night. So if you're there, find me. I will be there as well. And Sunday, heading home Sunday, I've planned it that I'll be home in Connecticut for the AFC Championship game kickoff. So I'll be home for that game. I knew, of course, bought this airfare, a few months ago when I planned on going to this show. And I looked up the football schedule because I knew it would be playoff weekend. And I said AFC, NFC championship game. And I knew those started at 3:00. So I said, best case scenario, my Chiefs are in that game. So I will plan accordingly to be home for that game, not to miss it. So that's it for today, but more than likely I will drop the next episode. I don't think I'm going to be able to get an episode out Sunday night from Monday morning. So I'm probably Monday's episode will come either Monday night, probably Monday night, at the latest Tuesday morning. So again, if you're in Atlanta, Culture Collision, come find me, message me. If you're down there, I'll come find you. Say hello. We'll hang out. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please definitely subscribe. And most importantly, tell a friend and spread the word. And until next time, take care of yourselves and everyone around you.